Hello and welcome to Ski Lodge. My family and I are on a mission to visit and learn about all the towns within a 4-hour drive of our house in Pueblo West, Colorado, and this month we went to Raton. Initially settled as a resting point on the Santa Fe Trail, Raton's location and natural provisions make it a crucial part of northern New Mexico. In today's video, I'll explain the history and geography we learned about Raton, as well as give you first-hand advice on what we found and what to expect if you go there. Let's get started. Mexico's independence from Spain in 1821 led to the creation of the Santa Fe Trail, more specifically the mountain branch, which ran along the Arkansas River in Colorado, then south through the Raton Range using Raton Pass. Initially, crossing the pass was difficult and only pack animals could make it through, but as time went on, conditions improved and Mexican families began settling around the area. In 1846, the Army led an effort to occupy northern Mexico during the Mexican-American War, so they performed improvements to the Santa Fe Trail through Raton Pass, finally allowing wagons. The war ended in 1848 and everything west of Texas became part of the U.S. Over the next decade, a campsite known as Willow Springs began developing at the southern entrance of the pass. Named after a freshwater spring surrounded by willows, it became an essential location to rest or prepare depending on which way you were traveling. In 1860, the Army designated Willow Springs as a government site and built a corral and storehouse. 5 years later, toll booths were added to either side of the pass, and the Santa Fe Trail was further improved using the collected tolls. These improvements allowed a weekly postal service to run through the area for the first time. In 1870, landowner Lucien Maxwell began selling plots of his ranch, including the land Raton would eventually be built on. Willow Springs was steadily growing, so in 1878 the town was moved to nearby Otero until the town site land was officially acquired in 1880. They chose to name it Raton after the nearby Raton Range, which itself translates to mouse in Spanish, named because of a large rodent population once found there. In 1879, the area was connected by rail, effectively putting an end to the Santa Fe Trail. Coal was discovered nearby, which brought lots of growth in industry, requiring Raton to be enlarged. 10 years later, they incorporated with over 1,200 people, and in 1897, it became the seat of Colfax County. Raton boomed between 1900 and 1950 from both coal mining and logistics. Neighboring Trinidad had a nearly identical economy, and the two towns sat like grand entrances on either side of Raton Pass. The entire area became quite successful and peaked in 1920 with more than 60,000 people living in the state line area. Unfortunately, this would come to an end with the decline of mined fuels following World War II. Raton used to have a population of over 8,000, but today sits around 6. And this is a modest decline compared to similar places. Thankfully, agriculture rose to become the most important industry, and tourism is a close second with New Mexico's signature enchantment found all around. In regards to Raton's future, major changes appear unlikely. Raton is located on I-25 in Colfax County, only 7 miles south of the Colorado state line. It sits at the very southern entrance of Raton Pass and the Raton mountain range at an elevation of almost 6,700 feet. The pinyon-covered foothills of the Sangre de Cristos are immediately west. Raton is the only out-of-state town within 2 hours of us in Pueblo West. It's closer to Trinidad, Colorado than it is to anything in New Mexico, and locals generally consider the state line area as one large community. Tiny Springer is 40 miles south, and Las Vegas and Santa Fe are well over 100 miles away. Sugarite Canyon State Park and Lake Dorothy Wildlife Area are nearby if you drive northeast into the high-altitude mesas. The surrounding landscape comprises mostly of pines and sage and can be admired from multiple points of the county. Part of the CP boundary can be found in the mountains west of town, which is cool because it physically marks the beginning of Earth's current era. Raton's weather is typical for the foothills, averaging 17 inches of precipitation per year, mostly from the summer monsoons. From May to July, rain can occur several times per week, and the temperature will generally reach the upper 80s, then fall into the 50s overnight. Winter days will make it to the 40s before dropping into the teens. Raton receives less snow than its Colorado counterparts, with an average of 30 inches per season that melts quickly when the sun comes out. The Sangre de Cristo fault line passes by west of Raton, meaning small earthquakes are fairly common in the area. The largest recently was a 5.3 occurring near Trinidad in 2011. Other common challenges include wildfires, flash flooding, and hail, but generally the weather is pleasant. The week before was in the low 90s, but the day of the trip was only expected to reach 45, so from the very beginning we were a bit hesitant on going. Unable to reschedule, we carried on. I-25 itself was clear, but snow covered the fields around us most of the way down. It was extremely windy. We hoped that it would be warmer on the other side of the pass. It was not. We arrived in Raton from Pueblo West in an hour and 45 minutes. We parked at Ripley Park on the north side of downtown with a plan to walk 9 blocks south on 1st, and then back up using 2nd, stopping at Legion Park on the way. This didn't happen. We left Ripley and started heading south. An Amtrak train was pulling into Raton Station. We noticed the bridges and other features were all painted New Mexico tan and teal, a nice change compared to Colorado's stone and concrete. We were searching for places to step out of the wind, but First Street was nothing but abandoned shops. Beautiful though they were, we kept walking. We looked across to Raton Station, admiring from a distance. We decided pretty early to forfeit the Legion Park plan, so we crossed over to 2nd Street by the Ford dealership. The taller buildings here blocked a lot of the wind and provided more to look at. 2nd Street is the equivalent of Main Street here, and most of the buildings date back to the early 1900s. The tallest building in town, Inbank, looms over everything else except for Goat Hill behind it. There were plaques describing the town's history everywhere, and the streetlights were adorned with pictures of this year's high school graduates. Downtown Raton was neat and maintained. The street itself was empty and quiet, which was nice. To our dismay, most stores were closed, and those that were open were not relevant to us as tourists. We understand this happens when we visit places on Sundays, but it's always a bummer. We walked back to Ripley and let the kids play while we looked up restaurants. We settled on Bruno's Pizza a few blocks away and made our way there. As usual with the smaller places, the wait was a bit long, but not unbearable. The food was good and priced right. After eating, we decided to take a drive to the top of Goat Hill, the scenic overlook. The road leading to it used to be paved, but neglect has caused massive chunks to go missing, making it a rough ride. The view was definitely worth it and looked over the entire city and then some. We then drove around town in the car for a while before jumping on I-25 and making our way back home. The unexpected cold we experienced absolutely put a damper on our trip, but we won't hold that against it. It's not Raton's fault we ended up with bad weather. We were miserable, but still had an excellent time visiting our southern neighbors and seeing Raton for the first time. None of my family has been to New Mexico before, so it was an adventure for everyone, and all of us are now eager to see more of the land of enchantment. Downtown was quiet and clean, and there were miles of natural beauty all around. The few people we interacted with were all very nice. We wish we could have properly experienced Raton, but the taste we got will definitely bring us back for more sometime. Still, we had some criticism. Overall, it was well kept, but it failed to amaze. When you're a newcomer to New Mexico, you get a picture in your head and you expect that it's going to be something different, something that really stands out, and instead we found a dated park and closed stores. The downtown area was pretty small, and the rest of town was just chain businesses and houses. Although enjoyable, it had a lot of unused potential. Considering these pros and cons, here's where we've ranked Raton so far. I hope you enjoyed learning about Raton as much as I did, and that you join us next month when we visit another important city, one that's deep in the Rockies, isolated by 14ers, the core of the upper Arkansas Valley that is also well known for its art culture and recreation. We'll see you next time when we visit Salida, Colorado.